February 17th, 2024. This is episode number 99 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, being recorded at 10:55 a.m. on a chilly morning. It's been a chilly night. It was great to just get into bed, sleep in a little bit. Try not to sleep in too much because you got a whole day ahead of you. You don't want to be waking up in the afternoon and then being like, damn, man, I got my whole day ruined, Sleep schedule falls off, and then it just is a total mess. But it's great getting in bed, falling asleep to either radio or podcasts or radio dramas, anything like that. Great to fall asleep to Coast to Coast AM radio with Art Bell. It's just fantastic. It's just unbelievably cozy. And we got a little bit of snow out there, not a whole lot. Snowed a little bit this morning, but the sun is already out again, and it's basically melting away as is. So the road's going to be totally clear and fine. Errands will be run. I'll be driving safely and get back here, get some writing accomplished, some more watching accomplished, and just make the most of our daily lives and do what it is we want to do in the time that we are given every single day and every night. Got to manage that wisely. So yesterday it was great to see the Oscar-nominated short films. I went and saw the animated short films and the live-action short films, and then next week will be the documentary shorts. And the animated shorts consisted of 5 main ones, as well as 2 that were just included as, addendums. Those were Our Uniform, Letter to a Pig, Pachyderm, 95 Senses, War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. Those are the main 5 that were nominated. And then the 2 that were added at the end were Wild Summon and I'm Hip. And they range from anywhere from the shortest being 4 minutes to the longest being 17 minutes. And then as well as the live action shorts, got 5 of them. These are a little bit longer. We had The After, Red, White, and Blue, Night of Fortune, Invincible, and The Wonderful World of Henry Sugar. It's great to see these with an audience, for sure. A lot of these short films I'm never aware of when they get nominated, or at least I'm never really aware of, coming across a lot of these short films. I've talked about before the Manhattan Shorts, which are so much fun to watch every year. 10 short films from around the world. Usually ranging from anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And you just get some really quality short films. And this year I enjoyed the majority of these more than I had the previous year. I don't totally remember the previous years, but I remember that the live action and the animated ones last year were not very good. At least not in comparison to what would be nominated, I would say. I remember liking the documentaries quite a bit. I'm looking forward to watching those, but there's really not any of these I think there's maybe one that I just didn't like. But the rest, the live action ones are a little wonkier for me. There's 2 of them I thought were okay, kind of average. One of them, actually 2 of them I liked, and then one I really didn't like. And then for the animated ones, there's I'm trying to remember reading these descriptions here. Oh, it was one that I really liked, 2 that I actually really liked, 2 that were, and then 3 that were decent. And then I guess with the addendums as well. One wasn't great, and the other was decent enough. So yeah, a mixed bag overall, but it's so much fun to watch these. You never, having no context going into these, and just seeing some really interesting shorts nonetheless, just seeing what gets nominated and all that. I've talked about before, I think the Manhattan shorts, in general, the ones I've seen have been stronger than a lot of the Oscar-nominated shorts, and none of those have been nominated that I've seen. So this past year's Manhattan short it was a little wonkier. It wasn't, I don't think as many of the shorts were as good as the previous years. In the previous year, like 2022, or 22, I think I liked like 8 out of 10 of them. But yeah, so I mean, I'm sure you can, a lot of the cinemas are showing the Oscar-nominated films. I know that like Cinemark will show like the 10 Best Picture nominees for Oscar week. So if you haven't had the opportunity to see any of those, and if they're you want to go out to the cinema, those are available there. Because some of them aren't available at home yet, so you'll have to go out to the cinema if you want to see some of these in time. I think the ones that aren't available yet at home are just the Zone of Interest and might be it actually. I think the others are all actually available at home. At least to either rent or buy. Yeah, I'm trying to look here. Yep. So, Poor Things I don't think is available on VOD yet. So yeah, just the Zone of Interest and Poor Things you have to go to the cinema to go see, but the rest are available at home to rent or buy or stream or anything of the sort. Just keep an eye out on those. Love watching these short films. And speaking of documentaries before, I'll talk about two recent documentaries, contemporary documentaries that were watched in the past week that were made by the same guys. Well, they were both were released by Draft House Films. And I watched both of these back to back. I'm sorry, not back to back. I watched one, and then I came back later and watched the other one. So I'll talk about the second one that I watched first because I think it'll add more context, and then I'll talk about the first one that I watched second because the film that I had watched, documentary from, I think these are actually both from 2022. Just want to make sure about that. Yeah, it says they're both listed as 2022 films. Yeah, one of them I knew had gotten some attention, and the other I had heard about, and Brian Sauer was talking about it, that I actually briefly mentioned last week. But the one that, so the second one that I watched, I'll talk about first for context, is this documentary called Chop and Steele. It's an excellent documentary about these two childhood friends who always are playing pranks, always getting in trouble, had a video camera running around, acting like goofballs. And when they get older, they end up forming I think it was called the Found Footage Festival. And what they do is, if like everything is terrible and a lot of these kind of traveling sort of events, they, take these these obscure VHS tapes found in like thrift shops and Goodwills and all that, and they kind of they rummage through them and they find just a lot of really bizarre, kind of ridiculous, surreal, whatever it is, hilarious, disturbing, whatever it is, moments that they compile together for like a live sort of show. And it's important to bring that up because the Found Footage Festival guys also did this second documentary that I'll talk about, but it's not to give the whole thing away, but basically they talk about when they're promoting the Found Footage Festival, they don't like doing morning shows. They talk about them being insincere and they're getting up early, just and the hosts really don't care. So they have an idea at first to get one of their friends to go on a talk show or go on like a morning show and just lie and get on and say he's this great yo-yo legend, or he's like this big like yo-yo champion, but he goes on there and he makes a total fool of himself, and it's hilarious. You get the awkward reactions from the news reporters not showing, they have to be straight, they have to be sincere, their bosses are watching them, making sure there's no nonsense, and so they they end up they keep doing it. They start to go on these shows themselves, and without giving the whole thing away, they get themselves in a bit of a legal situation. And from there, it becomes less about their pranks and more about what I found as maybe even more interesting in the first half was sort of this, I don't even want to say breakdown, because it's really not that, but sort of the evolution of these two guys and their friendship, sort of like they've been doing this for so long, and they're starting to, they're enjoying what they're doing with the Found Footage Festival, but they're talking about they don't have any money. I mean, they're happy, they're fortunate enough to be doing what it is they love to do, which is going around and showing these ridiculous VHS tapes. These guys are put themselves out there, and now they get to reap the benefits, but they're talking about being in dire financial situations, and there's an interesting part where they have one of the guys, they're offered to write for some sitcoms. And one of the guys wants to do it, and the other one really doesn't. So ultimately, they end up not doing it, and they talk about sort of the friction there of just where are you going with your life and settling down and this and that. And it's a heartfelt, but also consistently funny documentary. The editing of it is interesting. I think when you get to the second half, it feels a little bit more loose. It feels a little bit less quick than the first half. The first half, because it's focused more on these guys' pranks and the things they were pulling and all that. When you get to the second half, more so about what happens after these pranks. So not like literally after. Like I'm talking about more so like what they're doing with their lives is where it gets a bit more. Gets a bit more interesting, I would say. I think that, a documentary like this, and especially with the next one, the less talked about, the better, because it's very easy to just talk about all the big kind of pinpoints in the film and a lot of the issues, because when you get to there and you get to some of the reveals and you get to where they end up going, like in the third act, there's a whole other kind of part to it where, because the film goes away from the Chop and Steele characters for a while, that you almost kind of forget that it's about them. So when it does come back to them, it's you got to see it for yourself. It's ridiculous and it's funny, and there's a great sort of finale to the film where I'm watching the film, and I got to be really vague about this because I think when you see it, it's actually kind of funny. But they get themselves in a situation on a bigger stage, so to say, and there's one person where I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm surprised they didn't get this person to talk about it, because I feel like he would have been, able to connect with this ridiculous situation more. And then, lo and behold, the end of the film, they actually interview that guy, and they show him the footage, and they're like, "What did you think of this at the time?" And he's talking about, "Yeah, I was, I got it, man, even at the time." And it's great. It's a really fun, really enjoyable, quick documentary as well. This is only about 81 minutes. And I watched this on Tubi, so maybe round that up to about 90 minutes. But very funny, heartfelt, just really enjoyable documentary. Seeing these two guys who, they've been doing what they wanted in their lives, and now they're able to reap the benefits and the rewards. And although they may have personal struggles, financial struggles, ultimately it's an inspirational story to kind of go out there and do what it is that you want to do. It's a very good documentary. Liked it a lot. But of the two, the one that I got much more out of, and the one that if you only were able to watch one, I would say keep an eye out on what you're looking for. This is... Now, I think they may have just either distributed this or produced it. I don't think they actually had any... I'm not really sure they're involved with this, but I know that this was also involved with them. From 2022 as well is a documentary, A Life on the Farm, which I talked about last time briefly as saying that I saw it pop up on Canopy, and I wanted to watch it. And about 20 minutes after I recorded that last episode, while the audio was and the video was exporting, or rendering, I should say, I went ahead and I watched this, and this is one of my favorite things I've watched this year so far. I compare it to, and I think Brian Sauer may have compared it to another recent documentary as well, which would be a good pairing, is a documentary that I talked about a little while ago on the show from 2017, the documentary Love and Saucers, about this guy, David Huggins, who claims, he talks about this sexual relationship that he had with an alien, and meeting the family and all that, and from this comes these really interesting, disturbing, comical, surreal paintings, and it's a very heartfelt documentary. I talked about that more in depth on episode number 73, so if you're interested to hear more about that documentary, I would recommend listening to that as well. It's also short as well, much like this film, A Life on the Farm. And I would say more so than Chop and Steele, this one greatly benefits from not knowing much about it. I did get a little bit of it, just the setup, talked about on a podcast. So, and which isn't going to hurt your enjoyment of the film, but I think that if you don't know anything about it going into it, at least some of the other parts of it where it starts to get very questionable, I think you'll have a stronger experience. But so I'll talk about this, but I'll be somewhat vague on the specificities. So we have this tape we have this initial VHS tape that is found and I don't remember any of the people their names in the film, so I do apologize. But basically, this tape that was found called A Life on the Farm from this guy. His name was Charles Carson. Or, yes, Carson. And he talks about his life living on this. He's an older guy. His life living on this English farm. He, he's got this really kind of interesting mannerisms about him. He's very kind of jolly. He's making jokes, and they talk about his different laughs that he does, talking about different contexts, and he's got some quirks about him, and some of the things that he's showing, like a cow giving birth, and he's holding up the placenta, and you're like, oh, this is so strange. It's strange, but it's kind of like quirky in a way, and then it gets into some darker elements that really kind of take you aback. You're like, what is happening here, man? And I think the less said about that, the better. And that's all the first 20 minutes. So I think if you find out what the darker elements are, it's not going to hinder the rest of the film. But I do think that when you get to that point early on, and you're just like, because they hype it up a little bit. The guy talks about when he was a kid, his dad shut off the tape at a certain point, and then older, he remembers where his dad had shut it off, and then we see why he shut it off, because it gets into something. It gets a little bit darker, questionable to say the least. So then the rest of the documentary is finding out who is this guy, what is the context of any of this, where is this farm, what the hell is going on, and much like Love and Saucers, this is a very heartfelt tribute to a character of a person. Now, at the beginning of this film, we do find out that Charles has since passed away. I think he passed away in 2006, I believe. Whereas with Love and Saucers, David is still, at least at the time that documentary was released, still alive. I believe he still is as well. So it's, they interview some of his friends that live nearby, and they talk about sort of the older he was getting, some of the other quirks he was getting, and there's some great parts to talk about some of these funny comics that he was making. He'd pose like and write like little like word bubbles with the animals, and I was so, I don't even want to say surprised, because surprise would imply that I didn't see it coming at all, and early on, you get the sense of something more going on with this guy, but I was taken aback, I would say, by just how emotionally involved I was with learning more about this guy and the context and the theories that some of his close friends and acquaintances have with the tape itself, and some of the decisions that he talked about on the tape. And at the end of the film, man, I was almost teary-eyed. I was like, this was such a beautiful tribute to someone who maybe never thought that this would reach. I don't think, probably, never could have thought this tape would have reached an audience like it has now. And now that we have this documentary, and we have a newfound appreciation for this character and his quirky lifestyle. Now, I will say, it's a short documentary. This is actually shorter than Chop and Steele. This runs in at about 75 minutes. But one thing that was interesting that I have yet to find an explanation for, in the documentary, they talk about at one point the tape itself popping up on YouTube again in its entirety. And I was very curious to watch the actual full tape. It'd be interesting to watch the tape and then watch the documentary. But I go on YouTube, and it's nowhere to be found on there. I mean, it's gone. And I actually Googled it, and I found some people on Reddit talking about it as well. They were in the same pickle as I was. They're saying that, where's this tape? Why is it taken down? And so I looked. I was like, okay, maybe it's on the Blu-ray or something like that. Maybe they licensed it out, and I don't know. I'm just making up theories in my head as to any reason. And I looked online at the Blu-ray, and it's not even on the Blu-ray. So I have no idea where this tape is. I'd love to watch all of it, knowing what, having the context of the film itself, but until it reappears, we just have the footage in this documentary, unless maybe maybe it is in the Blu-ray. From what I read on Draft House's website, I didn't see it listed there, but let me double check about that, because I don't want to get the wrong information about the film from Found Footage. I'm sorry, this is from Found Footage Fest's website. Featuring interviews with See the documentary about the weirdest home movie Joe and Nick, the guy from Chop and Steele, I've ever seen. Now on Blu-ray with a feature-length commentary and bonus footage. Okay, yeah, maybe they talk about it there. Also, there's another documentary I do want to watch called Driver 23, which I remember an acquaintance of mine talked about a little while ago on his show. I think this one might be a short documentary, like not a feature film, but yeah, Driver. Okay, no, actually, I apologize. I got that incorrect. Driver 23 is 72 minutes, and the other documentary on there, Alice Moth, is 75 minutes. That may be streaming as well. And but A Life on the Farm, Chop and Steele is much funnier. And Life on the Farm is a different kind of beast overall. It's bizarre, it's strange, I can't even put some of this into words. You just watch, you're like, well, what is going on here, man? But at the end of the day, it's a really, really touching documentary. It's the kind to, if you're able to watch with an audience, I think if you watch it for the first time with an audience, everybody's going to be going through a lot of the same emotions of just laughter to shock to real, just kind of heartfelt. I really, really like this documentary, man. I know it's kind of a shallow thing to say. You can say, oh, I really like this film. Why do you like this film? And it just really touched me. And learning about the life of this man and this I love these kind of just like people who, break down VHS tapes or break down like questionable footage. Like, what is this footage? We know about it, this and that. So great, great documentary. I watched this on Canopy. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere else, but also I think I said, yeah, Chop and Steele's on Tubi. But this is also available on Blu-ray, as I said, as well as Chop and Steele also has a Blu-ray on foundfootagefest.com. And that, I don't know if there's any bonus features on that as well. But yeah, no, these will, Driver 23 and Alice Moth will be definitely watched sooner than later. Chop and Steele and A Life on the Farm, both worthy of your time. And both quick documentaries, too. You can watch both of them back-to-back in a day. And still have plenty of time to get plenty of other things done. So I've talked about so much on the show how much I just love documentaries. I love talking about them. Documentaries, above all else, are the ones I love getting recommended, and I love recommending. And I say feature documentaries because I know there's a lot of people like the Netflix like miniseries and stuff, and those are all fine and all that. I'm a film guy. I'm not interested in miniseries, documentaries, unless there's something contextual about it. Like I talked about the Arnold 3-episode miniseries. Oh, dropped the pen. And I mentioned that because I recently listened to that the 80s action star book. I'm blanking on now. So that was a completely contextual viewing. I would not watch that just out of out of the thousands of films that I have to watch. Because people talk about 5-6 episode miniseries on Netflix, like true crime stuff, and that's all good. And it brings back into the conscious of a lot of these kind of cases or stories. I remember when that was the HBO one that was like big a couple years ago. What the hell was it called? Yes, it was called The Jinx. What the hell is The Nick? Did I just make that up? The Nick is that's the Clive Owen show. My bad. The Jinx, I remember, was like in the public conscious again, and then of course Making a Murderer and Tiger King, and those were all great. I'm just never gonna watch them. I'd rather just watch even a long film. I don't have interest in miniseries like that. But on the other side of it, when I talk about a film I just finished this morning, which I'll talk about briefly, because I don't really like to talk about films that I'm not particularly a fan of. I've said before that if you're lending me your ears for the time putting here, I'd like to turn you on to films that are worthy of your time and are contextually at least interesting. And this film is an interesting bag. I don't know if I can overly recommend it, but I think for the sake of a curiosity piece, it is worth watching. And this is Paul Schrader's 2013 film, The Canyons, written by Bret Easton Ellis. This was his second screenplay, I believe. I think he wrote The Informers as well, which I think is also like a Hollywood kind of sort of underbelly of Hollywood kind of film. Bret Easton Ellis is an accomplished novelist. He's most famous for writing the novel of American Psycho, and he's also written like less than zero as well. He's also done screenplays. Like, okay, he did the novel and the screenplay for The Informers. He also, of course, wrote The Canyons. He wrote screenplay-wise The Curse of Downers Grove. I'm talking about features because he's done some shorts as well. And he also did Smiley Face Killers from 2020. And he has a podcast as well, which is interesting. But yeah, this film stars Lindsay Lohan and adult film actor James Dean, Deen. And I've always heard this film as almost exclusively negative. I've heard many adjectives used about this film. I've heard it is a disaster, it's embarrassing, it's awful, you know, it had all these production issues. Paul Schrader seems to always get himself in these situations where working with difficult actors. And watching it, it's interesting because it's not any of those things, man. It's not particularly good. It's got a lot of issues, a lot of major issues, but I don't think it really rests on any one particular person. I think that some of Paul Schrader's direction is good. I think some of Bret Easton Ellis's writing is good. And I also think that some of the acting by Lindsay Lohan and James Dean are both good. They just, none of these elements totally come together. But Paul Schrader's his last 15 years of films, I find his filmography to be so interesting. The different kinds of films that he does. I would say the only ones of his recent that feel similar and intentionally so are First Reformed, The Card Counter, and Master Gardener. And I've talked about First Reformed many times on the show. It's one of the strongest films of the 21st century so far. I think it's one of Paul Schrader's best films. And The Card Counter and Master Gardener I don't think totally come together, but I think are both very interesting and have a lot of really good things in both, as well as both excellent performances by Oscar Isaac in The Card Counter and Joel Edgerton in Master Gardener. And then Dog Eat Dog from 2016 is a different kind of film. It's very amped up. It's very almost hallucinogenic at times. I've only seen that film once. And then Dying of the Light, I don't totally remember, but I remember I remember some parts about it. But The Canyons is one that I always had that contact with it. You know, I like films kind of about the darker side of Hollywood and LA. I mean, you have like James Dean in the film, who was a trust fund kid, and he has an interesting relationship with this girl Tara, played by Lindsay Lohan, and it's like this four-way sort of complicated relationship between those two. You have this guy Ryan, played by Nolan Gerard Funk, and Gina, played by Amanda Brooks. And Christian is a manipulator. He's gaslighting. He has a real dominating relationship over Tara. He brings these guys over so he can film them having sex with her, but then when she starts kind of forming a relationship with somebody else, he becomes very jealous and very manipulative, and he's controlling the production on this pre-production on this film. And I gotta watch the clock here because I am running out of time, and I have quite a bit to say about this film. So, next time I will make a note of this. I'm going to talk about this more next time because I do want to mention this film. But I will say that if you're interested in watching the film, I would say go for it. It's an interesting film that doesn't totally come together and has a lot of big issues that I'll go more in depth with next week. But I think for Paul Schrader fans, there is a lot to be admired here. And acting-wise, I think interesting performances from all of the main four, and even a cameo from one of my favorite filmmakers. But for the sake of time, we're going to hold that off until next week. There's so much to do today. There's so much to write, so much to watch, so much to eat. I got to eat, man. Got to make sure we're on top of that. But with that said, thank you guys for listening yet again, or maybe for the first time, to the Cozy Corner of Cinema. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Make sure you're working on whatever it is that you need to work on, whether it's for 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes more work than you did yesterday. So thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time.